Hello team and welcome back to Sunday Vibes. We're in the Phoenix, Cavendish Square, Oxford Circus. Come and get your beers here as the Premier League commences. Joining me, it's permanent fixture now. Zach Jellab, how are you?
I am the Brighton of Sunday Vibes. I got promoted and I've stayed.
What do you mean? Okay. And continue to overachieve. Udogie, how are you, mate? Freshly back from your holiday, feeling re-energised?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, just back from Croatia, as you can tell from my extensive tan. Yeah, had a great time. We were on an island just off Split called Korčula. So had nice food, had nice beaches.
Korčula.
Yeah. Exactly, it was hot.
Your B-reels
not
were,
London temperatures, but
your
hot.
B-reels were interesting. Some of the days. Just I've never seen you topless that many times. So it's always a surprise.
Yeah, no. There's a lot under there. A lot.
and you were just grafting while you were out there, mate. I'd never known someone to go on holiday and tweet more about the football than when they're at work.
I just think if you've got 6 hours on the beach, I'm gonna check Twitter. You know, I love Twitter.
Are you bad at doing
I love
nothing?
football.
Are you always?
I'm always thinking about football. To be fair, I listened to a lot of
Always
podcasts when I was there. I mean, I did have some downtime, read some books, etc. But I just never really take a holiday from football. It's always in my thoughts. So I'm always tweeting.
Loving the ginger in the beard as well. That's coming
grown
through
it out, grown it
strong. And we have a strong episode for you today. We're going to talk about transfers that have perhaps gone under the radar a touch, because we've covered Chelsea pretty extensively recently, Manchester United, getting a bit of jip from you guys at home about only covering the big teams. So we're going to talk about some names that have maybe slipped under the net in terms of people's interest. Let's start with someone that's been bought by a relatively big Premier League team, Tottenham, for a pretty substantial fee as well, but he's remaining with his current club out on the continent, and that is Iyanoma Destiny Udogie to Spurs. Now the fee is reportedly £15 million up front, with £6 million lined up in performance-related bonuses. Spurs obviously loaning the left wing back, spent 84% of his minutes there last season, very specific from me, did pick that out, back to Udinese for the upcoming campaign. So a similar deal that was struck with Metz for Pape Matar Sarr last season, and he spent the subsequent campaign there. Now, because of that, it does feel more like a Paratici/club transfer, obviously planning for the future, but it does profile like a very Conte player, doesn't it? Dukes, can you give us a bit more background on a guy who just had his breakout campaign in Serie A in 21-22?
Yeah, absolutely. So people are very excited about this, to be honest. He's one of the very few under-21 players that played regularly in Serie A last year. It was a thing that lots of Serie A observers noticed on Twitter, that it was pretty much him and Aaron Hickey who were regulars under-21. Now, that might be due to the sort of reputation of the league. It's where a lot of older players go and to maintain their careers. It's also a lot to do with the managers there. The likes of Allegri and Mourinho really favour sort of experienced players. But Udogie was someone at Udinese who got a hell of a lot of minutes and performed really well in that. I think he got 9 goal involvements from left wing back, a real attacking threat as well. I mean, there wasn't that much reason to watch Udinese last season, so if you haven't seen that much of him, don't blame yourself. I mean, except for Gerard Deulofeu, they were really short of attacking threat. So Udogie was pretty crucial there.
The right back's just gone to Atletico Madrid as well, hasn't it?
Now Molina, who played at right wing back there. But Udogie, really exciting, was initially at Verona. I think he made his debut as about a 17-year-old against AC Milan. So they had a certain amount of faith that he'd managed to cope with that. Then went on loan to Udinese, but played enough minutes that they bought him permanently. And Udinese have come out of this really well, because they've got this fee and they get him for another year, which is a good situation to be in, especially having lost their right wing back. In terms of his skill set, as I said, he's mainly an attacking threat, picks up really dangerous positions in the opposition box, very similar to Perisic in many ways in that respect, but his passing numbers are never that impressive, which could be due to the fact that Udinese don't average that much possession either. So it will be interesting to see how he adapts to Spurs when he eventually gets there. But I am with you. I think this is very intelligent from Paratici and Conte, and Spurs really, rather than Conte, because I think they are potentially preparing for the fact that Conte, might not be there any longer than 18 months, 2 years, unless it goes exceptionally well. You imagine that unless they start challenging for major honours, is he going to really stick around for a third year? Probably not. So it feels like they are preparing for that, signing one of the best, most impressive young wing-backs in Europe, similar to Spence, similar to Sarr, as you already mentioned. But then Conte's got his way on some of the other signings as well, like Basuma, Richarlison. They're ready to hit the ground running. Perisic, of course. So I feel like this is another intelligent move from Spurs in signing a very promising player.
Yeah, great future planning. 14 years younger than Perisic, who he might be competing with for a starting berth next season. Of course, Ryan Sessegnon at left back as well. They've still not offloaded Sergi Reguilon. I think there should be a market for Sergi Reguilon.
Absolutely.
Despite Conte not rating him and despite falling out of favour with a lot of Spurs fans towards the end of last season, I still think he's a good player. So I think he should get a decent move come the end of the window. Now, also pursuing Udogie was apparently Manchester City and Brighton, so this is a little bit of a coup for Tottenham. Jalab, have you got anything to add? Any more colour to bring to the table that Udogie maybe didn't mention? We've got some very specific numbers down here, which maybe illustrate what sort of player he is as well.
Yeah, in terms of numbers, in an attacking sense, he looks fantastic. He's in the top 1% for non-penalty goals. Well, this is for fullbacks anyway. Top 12% for touches on the opposition's box, which is all exactly what Conte wants.
Very Conte. I'm sensing a bit Marcos Alonso here.
Yeah, indeed. Let's just say if he's a better defender than Marcos Alonso, that's for sure.
Well, he's actually in the top 16% for defensive pressures and the top 19% for tackles.
Oh, there you go. So it sounds
it's a great start.
It sounds, especially for someone at his age. Like that's one of the things as well. When someone's so young, they can be moulded into kind of whatever Conte wants him to be. And if Conte likes you as a youngster as well, then good God, you can become a fantastic player. The issue at the moment is maybe his passing. His passing numbers aren't necessarily the best because he's in the bottom 1% for fullbacks when it comes to total passes attempted. But that being said, Udinese aren't necessarily the best at keeping the ball and passing the ball about in general. So it might be more of like a team round thing rather than something to just point out and blame
That's
him.
fair.
But overall, like for £15 million, getting one of the top highly rated youngsters from Serie A, I think Spurs fans can be over the moon. And also him going back on loan there, like not having him to adapt straight away, I think it gives them it's the perfect mould at the moment, for sure.
They now, like I said, have great depth there, don't they? He feels like, with his dribbling numbers also being pretty good, that he might have a bit more craft, a bit more guile than someone like Sessegnon, maybe a little bit more physicality than Reguilon. So yeah, his raw materials do look fantastic, and he should settle pretty quickly when he does come over because his parents are of Nigerian heritage, so they speak English at home apparently, which is going to help him in terms of settling in, which is a Brucey bonus.
Definitely.
Let's just talk about Spurs in a more general sense before we move on then, because I did see that the likes of Tanguy Ndombele, Lo Celso, Reguilon, who we've mentioned numerous times, and Harry Winks have been asked to train alone as the club try and engineer moves away from the club for them. What do we think to that, and can we find these players good homes? What are your immediate thoughts on that batch of players, Diggs?
I feel a little bit sorry for some of them, to be honest. Like,
it's very Conte.
Yeah, it is quite cutthroat. I know Harry Winks last year under Nuno Espirito Santo said he felt like he was in the B team. He was very much separate from the main squad, and now he's not even in the squad at all. He's separate. He's training by himself. And Harry Winks, got a few England caps. I'm not sure he's a top 6 player, but he's definitely a Premier League level player if he gets a chance. Ndombele and Lo Celso is a little bit harder because there was questions over Ndombele's commitment at times. They both had poor injury records. But Lo Celso in particular had a really good spell at Villarreal last season. And they are supposedly looking at signing him permanently as well. Ndombele's a little bit more complicated. I think a transfer I'd personally quite like to see is somewhere to someone... Basically, I think Newcastle's biggest problem is that John Joe Shelvey needs to be replaced eventually if they want to become a top 6 club, and they probably need to strengthen at right wing. So could they move Bruno G into a 6th position and Tanguy Ndombele becomes one of their box-to-box players? I think that potentially be quite exciting. And I do think he's got a lot to offer if he sorts out, his injury record and those supposed commitment problems as well. So I'd like to see a sort of move like that, potentially a move to someone like Juve as well, who look quite short on creativity. When Pogba's out, Di Maria's quite old as well. They are looking to sign Leandro Paredes, but that's not really his game. So could he offer something there? And then Reguilon, I think he'd be perfect for Brighton. It just makes perfect sense, at least on loan. Like, why don't they just sign him on loan? He can replace Cucurella for a season, and he'll definitely be a step up on Solly March at left wing back as well. I do think March
put up similar numbers, and then he'll be at Chelsea within a couple of years. Yeah, how do you feel about that batch of players then, and can you think of any other homes for them?
I quite agree with Udogie. I like the shouts. I think the big thing with Ndombele is like the wages, man. Like I don't blame it when a footballer gets on the contract that he's been given. It's hard to then go, well, should I go and leave for another club where I'm not going to get paid this amount of money? And obviously a footballing career is really short, and so you got to maximise the amount of money you're making. It does exactly. So it makes complete sense. If a footballer's more keen to earn more than necessarily play the max amount of minutes, I can get it.
He has told various media publications he thinks being happy at Spurs is achievable, and also I did read that Newcastle not so hot on him now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Eddie Howe is apparently unconvinced that he's going to add the steel required to that midfield, but I do like your thinking in that regard.
Well, even when he was on loan at Lyon last season, he didn't play obviously a massive amount of games, but he wasn't too bad. Like he was all right. Indeed. I just think it's a sad thing because it's a guy who, when we first spoke about him coming over to Spurs, it was like this brilliant, fantastic, creative player who Spurs like really needed, and it looked like it'd be a perfect relationship. Scored in his debut, I think, if I remember correctly,
Real Madrid
in his first start. And the first couple of months were pretty good.
We loved him, didn't we?
And then we absolutely did.
We were running our mouths about him.
We really did.
Relentlessly.
And then it didn't quite work out. And it's like, it's sad when you see that, when you know that they've got the potential, they've shown the potential, but then it hasn't quite worked out in a way. So yeah, I think, to be honest, whatever club's willing to kind of give him minutes and play him in like a more of a free role, I think when you are making him when you're playing for like someone like Conte, you have to be so on it.
It's a perceived lack of effort with Ndombele, isn't it? And the fact it hasn't worked with so many managers in such a short space of time, the optics aren't great for him. And
was
it
he
does
there
feel
under
like he's going to
Poch?
have to take a step down.
He was there.
by
Poch
Poch
was the
and
first
then
one.
Poch
Then Jose.
I mean, what do we make of Spurs' summer overall before we move on then? Because Udogie's their 7th acquisition. Happy with it? A lot of people saying it's overrated, a little bit. Some people saying it's underrated. Obviously that's just football Twitter in general, but what do we make of it?
I think it's really good, to be honest. I don't think they could have done that much better. I think they've added some quality and depth in a lot of areas. I think Perisic will be a significant step up at left wing back. I think Richarlison, for once, they can, rest Harry Kane, they can rest Son in a lot of games, and there won't be an enormous drop-off like Lucas Moura and Bergwijn last year. That's quite a drop-off. And Kulusevski continues to go from strength to strength. So their recruitment over the last 6 months has been first rate, and I think Fabio Paratici deserves a lot of credit.
Drafted him in, Kulusevski, into my fantasy team week 2. Took the hit on points. Nice. Panic stations already from me.
He looks like he's still running so hot as well, man. He looks so good.
Let's move on to Damsgaard then, to Brentford. And I've seen you tweet about this, Udogie, and I believe you're a fan of it. Yeah, so just to give you some context at home, the 22-year-old Dane has joined Brentford for 13.5 million, which was his value on Transfermarkt, which I found oddly satisfying for someone to go for the exact fee in terms of how they're valued. He's obviously joined from Sampdoria. Only started 6 games last season because he had an awful lot of injury problems, didn't he? He started out with a thigh problem. He then had knee surgery. Doctors then ran a bunch of tests on him and found out he had a type of arthritis. But now he's got the actual treatment he needed, the course of treatment, made his comeback towards the end of the season. Didn't put up any goals and assists, but that's kind of beside the point. He's ready to go once more, and to be fair, some of his physical stats in the limited amount of minutes that he did play at the tail end of last campaign, pretty impressive, and maybe made Brentford a bit more bullish in terms of signing him, because it does look like he's overcome them or found a way to deal with it. I mean, I like this. It's pretty low risk for that cost. What do you make of Damsgaard?
He's not Christian Eriksen, which I think people are kind of getting wrong, maybe just because they're from the same nation.
Both love a long-range banger.
Indeed.
Yeah.
He's not as creative as Eriksen was, and I don't think he's going to be quite playing maybe in the 10 role. Maybe more on the wing. I remember watching him during the Euros, and like he was someone. I think he was one of the standout players, to be honest, from the tournament. Obviously, Denmark did fantastically well as well. Were one of the underdogs, but he really did shine. And I think I remember thinking a lot of like he might be a guy that gets a transfer from the Euros, and he did, but it didn't quite work out.
It does feel like a little bit one of those throwback moves where someone almost gets don't know, linked with loads of big clubs off the back of strong international performances. That feels pretty 90s, doesn't it?
It's a James Rodriguez move, indeed, when he moved to Monaco, for sure. But and I think it's something that definitely improves Brentford's squad. Like, Brentford have now got to the point where they've managed to stay in the Premier League, and they last season managed to improve in certain areas, taking them from that Championship player squad to a decent level in the Premier League and being able to compete, to now having the money as well to maybe try and improve in certain areas. And I think Damsgaard is definitely an improvement. He's still really, really young as well, and can improve. And working under Thomas Frank as a manager who's going to get the best out of him. I think overall, for that fee as well,
Thomas Frank.
For that, I feel if you're making a Premier League signing for under 20 million, like, realistically, it's got to go really, really bad for it not to be worth it.
And he's probably going to hold his value at 22 years old, isn't he? If it doesn't work out, they have to sell him on. I love Brentford's recruitment this summer. Keane Lewis-Potter, Aaron Hickey, Damsgaard, Oshie on a free, and Ben Mee on a free as well. If I was playing Football Manager, I'd be very content with myself off the back of that summer recruitment drive. But any more to add on Damsgaard then before we move on? Because maybe you've paid a bit more attention, coming from Eurofootball Daily.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Udinese, Sampdoria are not a brilliant watch, at least last year. And Damsgaard wasn't, as you said, a regular feature because of his injury issues and that arthritis issue as well. I mean, they've got Quagliarella, Candreva, Francesco Caputo. It's like the over 30s there, just like running the show. But Damsgaard, I wasn't so keen on it when I thought it was 20 million, but now it's 13.5 and I'm a little bit easier on it.
Maybe I misconstrued your tweets then.
Well, I basically just played devil's advocate on both sides. I was like, he's clearly talented, but it's a lot of money for someone who's coming off 0 goals and assists last season on the back of an injury hit campaign. But obviously he's, as Zach says, you can see during the Euros he's got a serious amount of quality. And I'm kind of with you on their recruitment. I think they've been reasonably smart. I think it's slightly strange that they signed Aaron Hickey to play right back, given that he played everything pretty much every game last year at left back. But,
he did come up playing right back, left back, central midfield.
Yeah, and he can also play right centre back, which is what they seemingly switched to on Sunday against Leicester as well, which is a nice, option to have. And Ben Mee will be good if they want to play a 4 at the back, but then they've got Christophe Ayer coming back from injury, who can hopefully get more minutes than last season as well. But I'm kind of with Zach. I think maybe Josh Da Silva, who's now back fit, plays more of that Eriksen role, and he did score a wonderful goal on Sunday, and it was really nice to see after, I think, 18 months out with injury. And Thomas Frank sort of taking him over to the fans and making sure he got all the attention he deserved was a really nice touch as well. But Damsgaard, more of a dribbler than a sort of pick the through ball sort of style creator. But it's a reasonably smart pickup, and I'm kind of with you. I think their summer business is pretty smart. The thing that sort of interests me was Strakosha going there, because the last couple of years he's dropped out of the team at Lazio. Pepe Reina took his place, and now he's gone to Brentford, where unless David Raya leaves, which he might do in the next year, but no guarantee, he's probably going to be on the bench again. Seems like a slightly strange move from his perspective. Maybe he's been promised some minutes. But
yeah, I also feel like Raya is interesting, some of the big boys, isn't he? Just because of his ability to play he's football with his feet.
I feel like every time Man United play, everyone's always like, David Raya's better than him.
On the taxi on the way in, I saw an article like, meet David Raya, the Rondo playing goalkeeper who's gaining interest from Manchester United. I thought, okay, maybe that's why they brought Strakosha in, who was, I think 2 to 3 years ago, put up a +5 post-shot expected goals. Season, 2 years in a row, right? Or 2 years out of 3. So comes with a great degree of pedigree, like you've said, and will definitely be pushing him for that number 1 jersey. I mean, if Damsgaard can find some of that Nordjyllands form, where he got 17 goals and assists in 31 starts in 2019-20, or even the 2021 season, his first campaign in Italy, he was largely a substitute, wasn't he? I think over 50% of his appearances were from the bench, but or around 50%. 6 goals and assists in 18 starts. If he can rediscover some of that form and just recover from that injury, put up a decent amount of minutes, that'll be a successful campaign. Let's move on then to Amadou Onana, because this is a big money move. £32 million. I'm not sure if there's any performance-related elements in this. Lille, by the way, have sold over £90 million worth of talent this summer. So let's hope
they do all the time. But think back to Pepe, he doesn't stop.
I saw the signs from Clermont Foot. That's pretty interesting recently. But a bit of background on Onana. So obviously came through Hoffenheim's academy, played 25 games in a Bully 2 with Hamburg. Only started 11 Ligue 1 games, didn't he, for Lille last season. So I think everyone's probably, or the average football fan, very surprised in the way that West Ham and Everton have seemingly gone all out to get him to their club, and Everton winning that foot race. What do you make of Onana then, boys? Who wants to come in first?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an improvement on the midfield that they've got at the moment.
Which is non-existent.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Delph and Sigurdsson gone, right?
100%. And then obviously Alan, I think, has been okay, but maybe not what people could have expected, like he was at, say, Napoli when he's been there. And from what you're reading, like, Onana is this presence. He's like 6'5", a dominant on the ball, but at the moment it looks like statistically he's a good defensive player, but they're being spoken about as if they want him to progress the ball forward, and there's been Lampard's and Co are saying they want him to play in the 8 position. Obviously Everton have also been linked with Idrissa Gueye as well to bring him back, and maybe you can see a partnership between them. But I feel like from what we've seen anyway, there's nothing shouting out there that he is amazing going forward with the ball and progressing it towards the attack, which is actually what Everton are desperate for at the moment. There are also parts of me where I think, okay, he had the option to also go to West Ham, who, if you look at the two clubs at the moment, are miles apart. You got West Ham, who are obviously battling for European football and Europa, not Champions League, but Europa League. And then you've got Everton, who are in a relegation battle. And maybe it is due to the money side of things. And again, I don't think you can really blame a player for doing that. To be fair, now you think about it, he might have also thought, I'm actually going to get more minutes playing for Everton than trying to break into the midfield of Declan Rice and Co at West Ham. So I can understand that.
Well, I actually very unfairly said, just to add to your point, that this felt a bit slapdash on Everton's behalf because they lost out on a couple of principal targets, right? And I thought they were just like, well, West Ham are trying to sign this guy, he looks half decent, let's go sign him. But apparently Everton were pursuing him long before West Ham, and Lampard launched a real charm offensive this summer to bring him in. I think Kevin Thelwell, their director of football as well, like they're doubling down on this kid in a massive way.
And it's fine. Like, he could be a really good defensive mid, but like, if you're not getting that ball forward, which I think is a lot to bank on him at the moment, like he could possibly be fantastic at progressing the ball, but it's like,
a lot of weight on his shoulders.
Do you want to give this to a guy who's so young and like still with first season in the Premier League? He's only started 11 professional games in the league last season. I think it's a lot of pressure to put on him. And also when I look at Everton, I'm like, there's still like, who's scoring the goals? Like, there's nothing, like, you're not sorting out that area, and maybe they are doing that behind the scenes and they're getting things sorted.
There's a couple of reasons,
but in terms of him, like, I think it's absolutely fine. He has huge potential, especially in the defensive area, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens if he can progress the ball forward. But yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders for sure.
Yeah, anything to add on Onana, dudes?
I think it's a big risk, to be honest. I think for a club that haven't spent a lot of money over the last 2 windows, they're mainly operating for frees or players for under £10 million. Suddenly, out of nowhere, £30 million being spent on a guy that didn't play that regularly last year in a very poor Lille team.
Yeah.
Like, the best Lille midfielder over the last few years has been Benjamin Andre, and he just won't get a move because he's quite deep into his 30s
weekend,
now.
I think,
did score, yeah. But Lille were pretty terrible last year under Jocelyn Gourvenac, and they've now changed to Palon Fonseca. They got a big win at the weekend against Auxerre, and Jonathan David looked really good in that game again because he had a really slow end to last year. He was playing on the right wing at the weekend and scored some excellent goals. So yeah, maybe things are looking up at Lille, but again, they've lost Botman, they've lost Barret Yilmaz, Soumare obviously left last year, and Soumare was a player that we were quite hot on that has been terrible for Leicester, to be honest, and this feels even riskier. So I'm a little bit sceptical.
Yeah, I'm going to be a bit more reserved in my opinion on this. I do think, actually, like, they've got a couple of midfielders already who are okay in the defensive department. So it is risky recruiting someone who's, when their numbers do pop, it tends to be in a tackles and interceptions form, right? Because, I mean, like I said, Delph's gone. I think only put up over 13 appearances, or 13 plus appearances once, and that was in his first season. I think when they recruited him, they thought he was going to be the guy to pick the ball up from the defence and, like you've used the word, progress, help them progress the ball up the pitch to an okay degree. That didn't really materialise. They brought in Alan, who is still in like the top 2% of midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues for defensive pressures, still puts up a lot of tackles, but has just not been able to affect play at all, like, in any meaningful way, not racking up any passes, not running with the ball. Just doesn't look like he can handle both sides of the game, maybe in the Premier League at the latter stages of his career. So yeah, to then bring in a guy who's not like a pass master, who doesn't I don't know, might have a high ceiling, but isn't demonstrating a really high level of technical proficiency on the ball, is risky. Particularly when it doesn't feel like they've now got money to spend elsewhere. Calvert-Lewin is out. They've obviously been linked with Che Adams on loan, but then Hasenhüttl this morning, Friday, said they have no interest in sending him out on loan, although that did kind of maybe intimate that they're willing to sell him.
Well, also as well, supposedly Hasenhüttl came out yesterday, I think, or the day before, that a few players were surprised he came back.
Yeah.
He supposedly lost the dressing room and has been really distant.
Yeah. So I think a good player, lots of potential. Was it Martinez, who's given his Belgium cap? I think it was against the Netherlands. Has said that he sees him very much as a future Patrick Vieira, which is again a massive tag to live up to. Maybe a little, maybe a little bit unhelpful, but Everton are certainly putting a lot on his shoulders. So let's hope he just evolves into this midfield powerhouse next season and drags them up the league. I've got another one down here. Remo Freuler to Forest. I saw you tweeting about this again. Do you want to take...
This is mental. I'm like over the moon, like Forest have managed to do this, and very surprised. Like, fair play to them. Like, we recently got Tom Underhill, who wrote a book about Atalanta on Continental Club. I think it was me and McCubbs, or maybe Henry, on that week, talking to him about Atalanta, and he said, one of the key reasons why their struggles last year was that Remo Freuler and Martin de Roon didn't play as well as they have in the past. But these are two players that have been in the engine room, driving forward an Atalanta side that has consistently overperformed over the last 5-6 years, doing relatively well in the Champions League as well. And Remo Freuler's 30, he's got about 50 caps for Switzerland. He's played exceptionally well in there for a long, long time now. And Atalanta's great era of overachieving looks like it's slightly coming towards the end. They probably haven't replaced Papu Gomez or Ilicic, who's still there, but has had so many mental health problems over the last 18 months, as well as expected. And now Zapata and Luis Muriel are into their 30s. I think something like 8 of their 11 most used players last term were over 30 or over 29. So it does feel like a bit of an end of an era. And when you're leaving Atalanta to go to Nottingham Forest, I think that's just a clear as any indication as where European footballers at right now. And obviously the wages he's being offered at Forest, maybe he really believes in Steve Cooper, but I somewhat doubt it that he's spent the last 2 years following Steve Cooper's career. So it does feel like very much like a financially motivated move. But fair play to him and fair play to Forest. They've had to do massive business this summer with the amount of loanees they had at the club last year. And yeah, they've signed a hell of a lot of players. But I think some of the players they've managed to sign are really impressive. Lingard's obviously done well in the past. Orel Mangala had a good reputation at Stuttgart. Omar Richards was obviously at Bayern. Players like that. Like, I think they have done some smart stuff. I'm just amazed that Remo Freuler has swapped Atalanta, who finished, I think, 8th last year in Serie A, for a side that will probably be relegated. Like, I think it would be... I think most of the 3 promoted sides, you'd be like, if any of them stayed up, you'd be like, well done. That is quite an achievement.
Not 34, 35, is it?
No.
He's 30 and he's got 35 Europa League and Champions League appearances under his belt. So, like, a great pedigree. Like you've already said, he's an international. You'd imagine that, I don't know, for €9 million, this might have made sense for Everton, who have, like we said, are struggling to have someone in their ranks that progresses the ball well, that's a bit of a pass master, etc. Remo Freuler, is he making you any more confident, his acquisition, about keeping Nottingham Forest in the league?
I said Forest were going to stay up. I said Forest were going to stay up. No, look, you have to respect what Forest have done. Like they knew they had a very much a championship side that kind of not got lucky but overperformed last year to get into the Premier League. They needed to change things up and get players that were Premier League quality, and that's what they've done. And they've done it very, very well. They've not necessarily spent over the top on certain players, and they've got in players that you just wouldn't have expected, as you mentioned, and also like Lingard and such. Like you would have had no idea that he would have gone to. If I told you last season Jesse Lingard's going to move to Nottingham Forest, you wouldn't have believed it at all. And so, I mean, obviously the money side of things definitely helps, and I wonder if they've been smart with their contracts to have. You'd like to think relegation clauses and such, and whether players would move on if they were to go back down. But so far, like they've made a good start themselves. I watched them against Newcastle. I didn't think they were necessarily amazing in the attacking side of things, but also Newcastle are a very, very good side now. A really, really impressive side. I thought they actually kind of got let down in the end by Dean Henderson in goal, especially for the first goal from Shah. Like, I thought he could have done a lot better, and then it could be a very different game if it's 0-0 for much, much longer. It's interesting with Nottingham Forest, and I think so far, really, you can't blame them for trying. At the end of the day, they couldn't have just gone into the season and just hope for the best.
It's an absolute steal. Yeah, I mean, it was originally touted at like 15 million euros, and I thought, okay, that's pretty fair for both clubs, but I feel like Forest have got the better side of the deal there. Just someone that can really dictate play from the middle of the park, and adds okay defensively, probably as defensively sound as someone like James Garner was last campaign, but probably better at progressing the ball. Maybe lacks a little bit of athleticism versus James Garner. He's obviously much younger. I think 8-9 years is junior, but brings with him an awful lot of craft and an awful lot of composure on the ball. Let's move in. Well, we might as well stick with Forest then, because Emmanuel Dennis looks like it's gone from being a rumour to almost a confirmed transfer as of this morning. And I think that's around the £20 million mark, which represents a decent profit for Watford, doesn't it? Because they took a gamble on him when he was a bit of a bad boy, or perceived as a bad boy last season. I think he only cost £3.5 million, so they're making a tidy profit on him. Nice. He put up tidy numbers in the Premier League. And, I don't know quite what Steve Cooper is cooking up top. Brennan Johnson, obviously we've got Dennis, Awoniyi, Jesse Lingard, but all of a sudden you can see a fair amount of goals in that side if he's added. I mean, how do you feel about this one?
I think it's exciting. Yeah, I think as Zach said last weekend, they probably didn't offer much in terms of attacking threat. I think Brennan Johnson was, it was his Premier League debut, still really young. Didn't probably get going as many probably expected in that game. I thought Callum Wilson's goal was actually excellent, to be fair. Really nice flick to finish. But yeah, fair play to Steve Cooper. He's managed to attract big names and players that should make a significant difference going forward. I feel a little bit sorry for Watford. Like, they seem like they had one of the best attacks that the Championship's seen in years, with Emmanuel Dennis, João Pedro and Ismaila Sarr, but there's speculation that Sarr might leave and go to Leeds as well. So that's a little bit difficult for Edwards, their new manager, going in. But Emmanuel Dennis, he went off like a rocket last term. I think it was something like maybe 10 goal involvements in his first 15 league games. Slowed down towards the end of the year, as it looked like Watford were pretty much doomed from about February time. But he's clearly got a lot of quality. He's good on the ball. He's relatively he's got a lot of trickery in there, and he's pacey as well. So if they're going to play a slightly counter-attacking game and five at the back, and I think against Newcastle it was 5-3-1-2, and then you need some pace up front. And Awoniyi as well came in from Union Berlin. He scored, I think, 16 league goals last year, which was a really impressive tally. So hopefully they've got enough to make it a pretty competitive relegation scrap this year.
Relegated with Watford last season, but he did come top of the nutmeg charts. Which is really important.
And I also think you've got to remember, it's going to take a good little bit of time for this Forest side to gel. They've only met each other within the space of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so come maybe mid-September, end of September, you might really start to see what this Forest side is. And if they get Dennis in, that's fantastic. Like a proven guy that's done it in the Premier League. 20 million is quite expensive, but look, they've got to give it a go, otherwise they're just kind of committing to relegation.
Yeah, pressure on Steve Cooper's man management skills as well. Getting all of these players to get along. They've all come in. They all probably think they're going to start. How does that even work on sort of a squad harmony front?
Especially when last year, kind of what really did push Forest through was how he got the man management side of things so right. They were, as I mentioned, they were a squad of players that were Championship quality, and he got them playing unbelievably well and committing to the cause. And obviously they had the loanies and Jed Spence and that were fantastic as well. But yeah, it's very I suppose
a lot of the players they brought in are sort of under 25 as well, so should be very keen to make their mark in the Premier League and probably won't throw their toys out of the pram. Emmanuel Dennis feels like more of the outlier in this whole scenario, but I think he just adds a bit of, I hate the phrase X factor, but he does add a bit of X factor.
Yeah, and I've been listening to you boys attentively, but I've also in my head been trying to work out the composition of Everton's midfield should they get. Now they've got Onana. I totally forgot Doucouré existed for a little bit. Gomez as well. Like, dare I ask, where do you think Everton going to finish next season before we move into the next segment?
I've predicted them to go down.
I don't think I put them in relegation.
Do any of their recent acquisitions, because we didn't talk about Cody, but do they change your mind at all?
So they go. So I watched Chelsea Everton. I didn't think Chelsea that amazing. I didn't actually think Everton were that bad. I just thought Everton couldn't attack to save their life against Chelsea. Realistically, there's one moment where Gray, I think, has an opportunity to put the ball through and he mucks it up. But apart from that, they didn't really have any other chances.
Because I think Gordon had to play as like a
He did,
false
and he
nine.
just couldn't. And like Gordon is a great
So
player.
hard.
I think he's a fantastic player. But like putting him, he's just not a number 9.
Yeah.
You can tell he's a winger. So they need the ones to attack. But getting Connor, like they're playing 3 at the back. They're going to get in Connor Cody, who's been so experienced at doing that, especially in the Premier League over the past few years. Like, it's a good signing. James Tarkowski is a good signing. Whether Tarkowski works in 3 at the back, we'll see. But it is definitely getting that ball forward and scoring goals. That's going to be the tough part of it.
Yeah, I mean, £32 million for a kid that's shown good defensive nous, but they want to obviously evolve him into a number 8. I think Lampard knows he needs some more defensive steel beside him, and that's why they've been in with Kamara of Salzburg. So keep your eyes on that. Just a few little Everton tidbits there I wanted to get off my chest before we moved on to some other things that look like they're going to be more than rumours. Thilo Kehrer, West Ham have had 1 bid rejected for him, have gone back with a second. I don't know how that's manifesting at current. It looks like they're moving for him because of the Agard injury.
So tough, man.
But yeah, I mean, £33 million he cost PSG in 2018?
Seems like a while ago, yeah. And I feel a bit sorry for him because he just hasn't quite worked out there, but he's been played out of position mainly as well. I think he's played all across the back line and right back mainly last year. But at Schalke, he did seem like he was a very promising player. I'm not sure whether he goes into West Ham and starts in their first choice back line. To be honest, I think it'll probably be Zuma and Agard and maybe Ogbonna when he's back fit as well, if they're going to go to a 3 at the back system. But we'll see how it goes with Thilo Kehrer, but I do think there's a player in there.
Slightly sexier move then in Depay to Juventus, which looks like if he can agree a sort of contract split with Barcelona, he's going to sign for the old lady on a 2-year deal. What do you make of that?
I think they've signed some really excellent players in the last 6 months, Juventus, to be honest, and it's gone kind of under the radar. I think, if you look at the names like Vlahovic, Pogba, Di Maria, Bremer, Depay, like these are all players that we've talked about for years on Football Daily and rated highly. Right. It's a lot of change, but they needed to change. They finished 4th in back-to-back years. Their goal tally was the lowest it's been since something like 2007-8 last year. They were really devoid of creativity. And if they get in Leandro Paredes and swap him for Rabiot, who they don't even want, then that's another positive move, I think.
Yeah, it feels like they've kind of not given up a little bit on the youth side that they were trying to maybe build. Obviously, Kulusevski going to Spurs, they're lit going to Bayern Munich, and they've very much gone, we need to get good again now, because it's been a few too many seasons of mediocrity and scraping Champions League indeed. And that's what those signings are. Like, getting in Depay is a guy that with his quality, he's definitely going to add to the squad. Getting in Di Maria, like, these are players that are very much for the here and now, and really only for the next 2 seasons, to be honest. But I think getting Depay on a free, depending on what his wages are, you don't quite know, but I think he'll be absolutely fine. Like, it's a good, fun signing. Yeah,
I imagine they'll be pretty sizable. But they've also got Rabiot. Well, looks like they've got Rabiot's wages off the book, which are substantial. I think I read, and this could be wrong, but in the top 5 best paid players in Serie A, and he did arrive on a free from PSG, didn't he? And his mum is a famous negotiator, let's say, to put it politically. So maybe she did get him a hell of a deal. Might be the top 10. I don't know. But either way, like, to get Pogba in on a free and to send Rabiot with 1 year left on his contract to Manchester United for what looks like €15 million is great negotiating. I feel like United have had the wool pulled over their eyes, and they're ignoring like Paredes' availability as well. And I know he's not the same player as Rabiot. Rabiot is more mobile. Rabiot is a little bit more physical, isn't he? Paredes is more of a conduit to the attack, or to a more advanced midfield. But I think Paredes would be good for Man United as well, dare I say it. But let's not move on from Man United fully then, because I did want to talk about Gakpo, because it looks like they're also going to bid £35 million for Gakpo. It's good job Joe's not here. I think that vein would have just popped on the side of his face.
He also hates Juventus.
I don't get this one as well, to be honest. I mean, he's not a bad player by any means. I'm sure he'll have a very good career. But he plays his best football off the right, which is where Sancho and Elanga play. He's also been available all summer. Like, why have you waited this long? It's because you're panicking, and they've got absolutely no idea. Like, what was the recruitment team doing for the entirety of last year? I know they didn't have their manager fixed and who was going to come in, but surely they had a short list of players which wouldn't have included Marko Arnautovic. Like, they are just making some like bizarre moves, and the Rabiot deal, I'm not sure whether it will go through. I really hope it doesn't for their sake. I don't think they're going to get Frankie de Jong now, to be totally honest. But their alternatives to him just seem like completely nonsensical. Like Rabiot and Sergej Milinkovic-Savic and Frankie de Jong, in terms of a Venn diagram, there's like very little that overlaps them. I think Sergej Milinkovic-Savic is an excellent player, but again, he plays in the same position. Really, his best work is in the final third, where Bruno and Eriksen operate, where Donny van de Beek is going to operate. Like, what is going on in that club? And Rabiot has just been coasting at Juventus, to be totally honest.
His whole career.
Well, I mean, he did have a couple of great years at PSG, but that was a long, long time ago now, and I don't know what he really is as a footballer, to be honest.
Which was largely Pogba's problem at Manchester United. That he didn't have a well-defined role or position within the team, and that has been, like you've said, the case with Rabiot at Juventus, who's found himself on the left wing in a 4-4-2, or in a slightly deeper position in a 4-3-3, and has just been. He's been included in most sides, hasn't he? And
he's still in the French team.
A lot
as
of
well.
top managers, Didier Deschamps, Allegri have continued to pick him, but hard to see where he really excels, or where he's really going to bring that to United that propels him back up the table. Let's move on then, because we will save the United chat for future episodes. I think next week we might do panic buys, because I'm getting that sense that there's going to be a few that happen that unfurl in the next week.
Big Todd might do something crazy as well.
You know what, Big Todd business is beginning to look very sensible compared to United.
So. It's a little haphazard, but it's kind of working.
And if you want to read up on 10 more moves that we didn't speak about that have gone under the radar, then Eurofootball Daily did an excellent top 10. We'll put the link in the description or as a top comment. Let's move on to quickfire questions then, gentlemen. And these have come in, as they have been for a number of weeks now, from the Discord. There'll also be a link to our fan-run Discord in the description. Join it, because we're often in there and we often ask these guys to contribute. And it's just a great little community. This one's from Grat. And he said, we'll get over this fairly quickly because news has evolved this morning. What do you make of the Marcus Rashford PSG rumours? Now, quite importantly, Man United have the option to extend his contract for a year, don't they, Zach?
Yeah,
so it feels like it's killed any buzz.
Well, that was what it was about, was that his contract was running out, and that PSG were interested in possibly gaining his services. And supposedly there was rumours that Rashford was also quite open to it. But then, Sky Sports News came out. There is the option for an extra year, and also Man United said they're not going to sell him. But it would have been good fun. It would have been good fun. I mean, how he would have fitted into the side of a Neymar, he would have had to be in the rotation option of a Neymar, Mbappe and Lionel Messi front three, I don't know. Unless they were maybe open to, they have supposedly been open to selling Neymar, and maybe there was some sort of deal they'd heard of. But I've said it numerous times that it's sad to see where Rashford is now as a footballer, where he just, like, the chance that he got against Brighton, where he's in front of goal, no one in front of him apart from the keeper, like, Rashford 3 years ago.
It's a good save. Robert Sanchez, great save.
I think it is a good save for sure, but I think Rashford 3 years ago doesn't give him the option to. Like, he just absolutely finishes it.
Still looks a bit.
Whereas he looks so out of confidence. Still doesn't quite know maybe where his role is in this United side.
I've had a good pre-season on the left. I think Ten Hag is going to persist with him on the left. Whereas, it doesn't feel like he would get a chance on the left at PSG. Dukes from Jack Davies' Tiny Ears. Which player at your club do you think has the highest ceiling? I mean, this is going to be a
ready
left
for the
field
Sunderland.
answer. Yeah, let's go. Sunderland.
Gooch is probably at his level, to be honest. Patrick Roberts has played quite a bit higher, obviously ex-Celtic as well.
We thought he was going to be the next big thing.
Now.
Jack Clark was interested. Well, he was at Leeds, went to Spurs. Now he's back at Sunderland on a permanent move. Yeah, I think he's looked really good in our opening 2 games. We're actually second in the Championship as we film this, which is a great place to be. We've got QPR on Saturday, so things
You're
might
going to be the
start
Prem next
tumbling
season,
home.
mate.
No.
You're going to be the Prem, believe it.
It wouldn't be an
believe
episode.
it.
I'm not going to get carried away.
Of Sunday Vibes featuring Doogie if you didn't have a bit of Sunderland chat. Who's got the highest ceiling at Chelsea then?
Probably.
Quite a lot to choose from.
Probably Reece James. Like Reece James. Mason Mount, I think Reece James to be one of the maybe like top 2 in the world in his position. Whereas I don't think, whilst I think Mason Mount is great and fantastic, I don't think Mason Mount's going to be top 2 in attacking mids.
That's fair.
Like he could be a top 10, top 15 for sure. But whereas Reece James has the potential and is already very much going towards that potential of being like one of the best in the world in his position. Like in 3 years, well, arguably already happening now, but in 3 years it's very much in my eyes going to be him or Trent, like on how it's going. Yeah, I mean, there was always talk about Callum Hudson-Odoi. Like, I saw a thing about youth guys saying, who's that guy that you used to come up against? It was just like, you can't do anything about it. Like, he just gets the ball and he does what he wants. And they all said Callum Hudson-Odoi. It was like this kid, when he was at youth academy football, just did what he wanted. You couldn't tackle him. He was always 10 steps ahead. He'd score and it was just ridiculous. And it's a shame to see how that's kind of gone now. Obviously, he's still only 20 years old. He came through obviously under Sarri, but and maybe this loan move, that if it does work out, can get him back on track. But really, I think probably Reece James. I don't really know, but the others that kind of could possibly hit the potential, like maybe Kai Havertz. God, he needs to, that's for sure.
I think if Jota impresses in the Champions League for Celtic, then he'll probably be Premier League club next summer. So
I do enjoy when you share a clip of him. He does look good.
Yeah, but it's normally just because of his hair.
He's sensational, and not just because of his hair. Unfortunately, it looks like Collado is not going to sign the Barcelona youngster for Celtic.
He's going somewhere else.
Looks like he's going to go to, I want to say Elche.
Yeah. I saw that.
A lot of Spanish
Spain,
guys want to
Scotland.
stay in Spain, and you can see why.
Makes sense.
Right, let's move on then to personal questions. We'll just do the one. Play Then Say is asked, if you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say? Don't overthink this. Just whatever comes to mind first and foremost. Doesn't have to be the perfect answer. Doesn't have to be.
I mean, it's quite deep, but I'd probably say something about the climate emergency.
I was literally about to say the same thing. No joke.
I'd maybe say that we should stop the production of meat. Maybe I think we could all probably do it.
Eat less bacon.
Eat less food. If everyone's stuck to eating meat once or twice a week, then I think the world would be in a much better place.
Wow. I was just going to say turn off your electricity half the time, but something like that. Yeah, it's probably climate stuff. Honestly, it's bad. It's bad.
It's not just you've got to do a bit of recycling. We need action.
It's some sort of climate thing.
Jota on the wing. Jota on the wing for 30 seconds. That is all for this week's Sunday Vibes. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, then please like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on. What else are we pushing across Football Daily or Football Daily?
It's back.
Yeah, it is back. Before I get onto that, McCubbs and Henry had a Spanish journalist on Continental Club this week in my absence, who was apparently brilliant, so go check that out. But yes, go check out yesterday's Stat Wars. Episode 2 is live. It was Zachary versus Joe. So go give that.
Things haven't changed, lads. It's been 3 years. Things haven't changed.
Row up. And if you'd like to know more about the stories we've been talking about on this week's show, then just take a photo of this QR code on screen right now. And we'll catch you next time.